Hey, hello everyone. Just wanted to give you a post lobby day update, and I'd like to start out by thanking all the people, including Virginians, but especially folks who came from all across this country. I met all sorts of cool folks. I had friends that came up and stayed with me from Mississippi and North Carolina. And there were folks from, I think, every state of the union. And I want to really thank from the bottom of my heart, I think on behalf of a lot of Virginians who believe in our constitutional rights and protecting them. And I want to thank you all for traveling and, taking the time off work and the expense of coming out here to stand for freedom for really not just America, but really the entire world. Because, as I've said before, the United States is a bastion of freedom. And if we fall, there will be no freedom on this planet, but we're not going to fall. As many of you probably know, Governor Northam, he just seems to keep digging his hole deeper and deeper. First of all, you probably all know that he 3 days prior to the event came out with the emergency declaration, declared an emergency, and he basically tried to turn the Virginia Capitol into a war zone. He had grossly excessive amounts of law enforcement on hand. He made claims, which I have FOIA'd to find out what exactly these credible threats were at this event that would have justified what they did was they set up all sorts of fencing and really were corralling peaceful demonstrators and creating bottlenecks. They really created it really seems like by design they tried to create an environment that was ripe for, violence to occur. Crowding people into places, bottlenecking the crowds. Minimal exits, blocking off lots of streets. So, like, once you get in, you can't easily get out. I don't know what they were thinking, but it certainly was not. I cannot believe that the preeminent thought there was public safety. That did not, I don't think anybody that attended that or could closely see from photographs the corralling, the cattle chutes is what it looked like. You felt like you were at a slaughterhouse. You really did. And so I do want to thank Virginia law enforcement showed up, including sheriffs from representing the Sheriff's Association, who, as I understand it, I didn't see this firsthand, they weren't even allowed to bring their firearms. Constitutionally elected sheriffs in Virginia who come to the state capitol were not allowed to bring their firearms on the Capitol grounds. That was only for, those that King Tyrant Northam decreed could have firearms. So even the sheriffs were out there in full uniform, and everybody was corralled onto the Capitol grounds. As I understand it, the audiovisual quality or the audio quality wasn't great in the speaking inside, but I couldn't hear that because I wasn't going inside. I carried a sidearm and had my bullhorn and made periodic comments here and there. But law enforcement was overall very friendly and I think very sympathetic to the cause. And I've been to a lot of demonstrations, as a lot of you may know. It's the largest demonstration I've ever been to. Do not listen to, I don't know which law enforcement agency put this out, but according to the AP, some law enforcement agency in Virginia put out the number of 22,000 attendees. I have been to a lot of demonstrations, and number one, I've never been to a demonstration that has this many people in attendance. Secondly, I've never been to one that had such a peaceful, positive vibe to it, okay? And it's a prime example of another benefit of the Second Amendment is that a well-armed society is a polite society. I've been to some demonstrations where people act like complete idiots, and you did not see any of that there. I think like the Antifa types, the infiltrators, the agitators, they were scared to come, and rightfully so, because it was the wrong place to try to make trouble. Everyone was aware that they were going to be there, including the police, and they knew that they weren't dealing with a Portland, Oregon police force who's ordered to stand down and let the mob do whatever they want to do. That's just not going to happen in Richmond, nor do I think that the many, many thousands of peaceful demonstrators who came from around the country were going to allow that to happen. If I had to guesstimate, I cannot believe that there were certainly more than 50,000. I think the number reached 100,000 because the majority of people did not go in the Capitol ground, and I think 8,000 people or so went in there because they had to disarm. The majority stayed outside in the perimeter, the blocks around, and surrounded the Capitol. And I mean, the place was packed. If you look at photos and videos from, 10 a.m., for instance, kind of when it was peaking, 10, 11 a.m., I mean, it is packed wall to wall, block after block. The entire streets are filled. You had to, excuse me, turn your shoulders to walk and that sort of thing. And again, I saw people of every race, creed, Black Guns Matter were there. Lots of black folks were there with their firearms. I'm always happy to see that because they try to make this into a racist issue, and I'm gonna walk out here and close this door that just blew open. They try to make it all, of course, into racial issues, and even Northam himself, the governor of Virginia, through his press conferences and stuff, tries to make it out like, the Second Amendment crowd. If you're Second Amendment, you're a white supremacist, or if you're a member of the militia, you're a white supremacist. Well, there's plenty of folks of color there who were members of militia, who were Second Amendment supporters, and I would venture to say probably not white supremacists because they weren't white. So one of the posters I love, it showed one side with Northam in blackface, and on the other side it had an AR-15, and it said something to the effect of why Northam doesn't like guns, and it's because they're black. But anyways, this governor came out with a statement, press release, basically commending all of his law enforcement team for, he used the term de-escalating. De-escalating. Everybody, go look at his Twitter feed, folks. Northam is getting lit up by folks. I think last time I checked, he had 22,000 comments. The overwhelming majority of them negative and in disagreement. This guy has now, I believe, become the most hated politician in the history of Virginia, and probably the most hated active politician in this country. Unbelievable that he is trying to give himself credit when he did everything he could to lay the groundwork to try to make those of us who support the Second Amendment look bad, to try to put us in a situation that was dangerous, and he did not succeed. And the reason he didn't is because good, law-abiding, decent Americans, well-armed Americans were there, and we, not a governor, not the state police, nobody else but we, the people, kept the peace, okay? So this clown claiming to have de-escalated something that there was no escalation, okay? The bad guys weren't going to show up, and if they did, they kept their mouth shut. I smelled a few Antifa types rolling through there, but I got to tell you, they stuck to themselves. They didn't say anything. They didn't have signs. I think maybe one guy did have a sign that had resist on the bottom of it, and he was claiming to be pro 2A. That's a friend of mine saw that, so they no white supremacists, no Nazis. I saw no Nazi symbolism, no white supremacy stuff. There was no talk of anything like that. So this governor just attempted through rhetoric and official press conferences and that sort of thing, tried to draw the correlation between law-abiding Second Amendment supporters and white supremacy and white nationalists and all these sort of hateful, divisive things that unfortunately it seems like that's what the left now specializes in, is just trying to divide us on every level, religion, skin color, income, you name it. They play that divisive tactic, and Northam lived up to that leftist rhetoric. But anyways, guys, it was a great day. It was freezing cold, so that's another reason I want to thank everybody for coming out, wrapped up and bundled. I think one woman was arrested, and I read it was a felony, which is news to me, for wearing a mask. Okay, every state trooper out there almost was wearing a mask. They had the full ski mask. All you could see was their eyes. It's like, So I don't know the circumstances behind that, the specifics behind that arrest. But sounds kind of hokey to me, and it's, I didn't even know you couldn't not wear a mask in Virginia. I didn't know that was illegal, particularly a felony to wear a mask. Maybe to wear a mask in commission of a felony, or particularly a violent felony, could in and of itself be a felony. But just wearing a mask? I mean, come on. If that is a law, I think we need to take a close look at that law and look at repealing it. But that's not going to happen while the Democrats are in power. But I tell you, we sent a very strong and clear message that we simply will not tolerate our constitutional rights to be trampled upon by these people, regardless of what mandate they think they got from voters by winning the majority in our legislature. That doesn't matter. When you've got constitutional laws, this Commonwealth ratified the United States Constitution, not sure what year, but ratified the United States Constitution, and thereby agreeing to abide by the protection of those rights that are set forth as protected rights. They're not granted rights. They are rights that were enumerated to be specifically need to be protected by the government. And, so therefore the state legislature agreed to those terms. They agreed to the rules of the game of being a state in the union. And they have no legal basis for infringing upon our Second Amendment rights. And I got to tell you, that was a peaceful demonstration yesterday, but I think if they continue on and try to trample upon our Second Amendment rights, that things don't necessarily have to remain peaceful. And those tyrants need to look at those 100,000 people who were out there. And these zealot leftists, we even have one leftist introducing legislation that would make it's completely just vindictive legislation. The NRA, which I took many training courses. Sorry, I missed that comment. If you want to say it again, that'd be great. The NRA has their headquarters in Fairfax. I've taken many courses at their gun range. It's a fine facility, got great instructors. It's a top-of-the-line facility, which doesn't surprise you when it's the NRA. And it's in like the bottom floor of their building, kind of the basement. It's sort of a sub-level and kind of integrated with their parking deck. I'm sure it even has a concrete ceiling. It's got concrete walls because it's kind of integrated into their parking deck. And some legislator, Democrat, of course, in Virginia has introduced a law that would not allow, gun ranges in office complexes or something of that nature. And he's obviously specifically targeting the NRA's range. And it's like, wow, how can an elected official even introduce some legislation like that without just totally realizing he's abusing his power? But that's what we're dealing with here in Virginia. That's how pathetic it's gotten. I think Northam, he just keeps digging his hole deeper and deeper. I think he, with his actions in all of this lobby day stuff, he really has, I think, lost the support of the majority of Virginians to govern. It was bad enough with his blackface stuff, how embarrassing that was, and his infanticide comments. But now he's just more interested in protecting his regime. I wonder if the little weasel was even at the governor's mansion yesterday. I wouldn't be surprised if he was elsewhere or in a tunnel under the ground or something, because he was surrounded by 100,000 patriots. And I got to tell you, I wouldn't want to be that guy right now. But he's made his own bed, and he's going to have to sleep in it. So anyway, it's I think it was a great victory for Second Amendment advocates. I think it clearly showed them how many of us there are. I think just the appearance and behavior of the crowd, which included picking up trash at the end of the day. Go look at the post-demonstration photos and the complete lack of trash everywhere, okay? There were people, as I was walking out, with trash bags, regular people who were demonstrators picking up trash, and you just don't see that at an Antifa gathering. What you see is litter and destruction and mayhem and violence afterwards. So, you couldn't have had, I don't think we could have had a better demonstration go down. We totally defied all of the governor's fear tactics and rhetoric. I think that law enforcement was not going to play into his hands. Overall, I do not think he has the support of law enforcement. I talked to many police officers when I was there, a lot of state troopers, and they're not going to say it straight out. They're not allowed to. But you can just tell by their demeanor and their response, their facial expressions when you ask them questions about, supporting these sorts of actions of Northam. and you can tell they don't support him. But, you know, it's got to get to the point where if they start passing things like red flag laws and confiscation laws and those sort of things, it's got to get to the point where some law enforcement officers, the sheriffs have already done this, of course, but where, you know, state and even like Richmond police and county police say, hey, you know what? We are not going to, we swore to uphold the Constitution. We're not going to enforce these. And you got to resign if you have to. Okay? I know you don't want to give up your pension. I know you don't want to have to find another occupation. You probably love being a law enforcement officer, but you have to resign. You have to do the right thing and resign. And it's not always easy to do the right thing, you know? But look at the alternative. You're going to kick in the doors of your fellow Virginians. You're going to criminalize, you're going to enforce the criminalization of otherwise law-abiding citizens. You know, it's absolutely absurd. And I think Northam is making no friends in the law enforcement community either by putting, by putting these officers in that position. I said yesterday on my bullhorn, among many other things, that I am fully in favor of door-to-door confiscations of firearms as long as Governor Northam is the point man and kicking down those doors. Of course he wouldn't be, because he's a little weasel coward who expects law enforcement to do his bidding for them. But again, I urge you guys, you know, as law enforcement officers who took your oath to protect and defend the Constitution of Virginia as well, which also protects the militia and Second Amendment rights, that you honor that oath, and you might have to do so by resigning if need be, or just blatantly defying orders, but then you're probably going to be fired. You should do it publicly with a resignation and say, I'm not going to do this. You will have the support of the people of Virginia. You know, I think good things will happen to you if you're that law enforcement officer or that group who stands up and says, we're not going to do this. You know, you're going to be heroes, and good things happen to heroes in this country. Anyways, guys, I love y'all and everybody that attended. You know, I thank you from the bottom of my heart, especially if you traveled a long way and endured lots of expenses and hardship and missing work and that sort of thing and away from your family. There were a lot of women there. That was great to see. There were people of every ethnicity, every color. I mean, there were transgenders there who flew like rainbow Gadsden flags that they want, you know, their rights protected. And you know, Democrats and leftists try to talk about women's rights and minority rights and such. Well, who do you think needs the protection of a firearm probably more? I'm a 200-pound, 6'1" guy. Me or a 5-foot-tall, you know, 110-pound woman who's walking around the streets at night? Who's more likely going to be targeted by a criminal for a violent offense there? So leftists like to talk about empowering women, but firearms are the great equalizer. And if women are best able to protect themselves if they have access to firearms, and it just seems like the leftists don't want anyone to have access to firearms. And the same thing really holds true with minorities. It's like, look, you know, if you live in like a minority dominated lower income part of a city, for instance, you probably are in greater need of self-defense and being able to have the means to defend your family than somebody who's living in Windsor Farms, for instance, which is a very wealthy part of Richmond, where people of all color live, but it's socioeconomic. And but disproportionately, there's more people of color in the socioeconomic, you know, underclass, if you will, sections of towns and cities, and those are the folks that need the protection. So they squawk about minority rights and women's rights, but these sort of infringements hurt those groups probably more than your average white guy like me. So let's keep that in mind when you hear them squawking about women's rights and minority rights. Not to mention, you know, you talk about minority rights, and then you can talk about the abortion issue and how disproportionately babies of color are aborted relative to white children. So, you know, there's another instance where they claim, you know, to be champions for minorities, but in reality, the practice and their practices, their policies, and their laws actually target and disempower, you know, minorities and women. Anyways, guys, I love y'all. Keep up the good work. This is not the end of this battle by any means. Please keep your attention on Richmond and Virginia. The more pressure we can put on these leftists and show them that just because you were elected and you now have the majority doesn't mean you can trample upon our constitutional rights, both our Virginia and our federal Constitution rights. And we need your continued support across the country. I love seeing that there's 22,000 negative comments about this governor. He deserves every one of them. I don't think I've ever seen a Twitter post that has such overwhelmingly negative comments, with only a handful of positive comments. And these people are just absolute. They seem like they're off their rocker, like they're out of touch with reality, thanking him for protecting Virginia and this and that. It's like he didn't protect Virginia. Oh, you know what? I just saw something about snipers, and I didn't see any. I saw other people say they saw them, but I'm sure they were there. I mean, there are a lot of tall buildings and rooftops around. I guarantee you there was at least a dozen law enforcement snipers out there, without a doubt. Anyhow, please continue your support for Virginians. Most of us are folks who believe in individual rights, and our state has been, if you don't know what has happened in Virginia, due to the bloated federal government, we have a lot of like Northeasterners coming from these leftist-dominated failed states like New Jersey and New York and all kinds of other places. They come into Northern Virginia, and, leftists are typically now really the big government party. They just want to tax, and grow the government and stick their nose in our lives more and more every day. And that's what's happened with the federal government as well. And Northern Virginia has grown. I've lived here for almost 50 years, except for time overseas. This is the only place I've ever lived. I've always been a Virginian, and I have seen the transformation. I grew up there, and the amount of money that the federal government has brought in and the people it has attracted from these northeastern failed corridors has changed the demographics, the political demographics of Northern Virginia. And in addition to that, we have a significant illegal alien problem here in Northern Virginia, and we also have voter fraud problems in Virginia. If you scan news articles, you'll find we've had cases and they're always involving Democrats, always. So don't think that somehow Virginians like me have overnight magically changed our principles and that we don't believe in the Constitution and basic fundamental human rights. We still do. We're still here, and we're still large in number, okay? But between voter fraud, between, I call it carpetbag infiltration into Northern Virginia, and illegal alien mixed in with voter fraud, because I know a lot of these folks are voting illegally. They're voting for the party who says they're gonna give them. It is RICO, and it's treason. And I think Northam actually proved himself in this whole instance to be a genuine threat to public safety. That is not political rhetoric. If you were there and you saw it and you're listening to his words and his press briefings, the sort of hate he's trying to rile up, he is a threat to public safety. He is Virginia's greatest threat right now. He is the greatest threat to peace in this Commonwealth. I'm telling you that, and I think a hell of a lot of people believe that here. But this battle ain't over yet. I am confident we're going to win this battle. I feel really good about what. As a matter of fact, when I woke up yesterday, I rely strongly on intuition. I believe that it makes a lot of sense a lot of times to sleep on things, and I think that we take in information when we sleep that we don't necessarily know where it comes from. I'm not going to get into that. It's a whole other video. But I believe in that strongly, and it has served me well over the years. And especially on issues like this, when it involves volatile issues and demonstrating, and I do that sort of thing a lot, and activism. And I did not honestly know, after he issued this emergency declaration, if I was going to go in full battle gear to this demonstration, not with the intention of starting a fight, but to show some clear optics of how many of us there were. I knew a lot of people would still show up in full battle gear. I'm glad they did. I had friends with me from out of town, including a retired dentist, my buddy's dad who wanted to come up. So I decided, for a multitude of reasons, that, hey, you know what, I'm not going to wear the full battle with my battle vest and my long rifle. I just loaded my sidearm up, a couple extra magazines, wore a sweater, and the same, BDU khaki pants that I wear every day to work. And that I think told me, once I woke up knowing that that's what I should do, and I subsequently also realized, hey, you know what? This is going to be a very successful, a very peaceful day. There's not going to be any battles that break out, and it's going to be just a peaceful, good day, and I don't need to be in that gear today. There might come a time when I need to put that gear on, but that wasn't the day yesterday. And plus, I'm on the bullhorn, so, a lot of people are looking at you when you say stuff on the bullhorn, so, you want to be careful that you're, in every way, the way you look, the way you speak, that you're sending the message that you want to send, and that's what I was able to do. So I knew waking up that yesterday was going to be a great success, and I'm here to tell you guys it was just a great feeling to be there. If you have local demonstrations that, support your constitutional rights or other things you believe in, you should get out there and mingle with those people, because it makes you feel good, and it reinforces your good thoughts and your ideas about freedom and that sort of thing. It reinforces, and you're not alone. You're not alone when you go out there and there's 100,000 other people carrying firearms and peacefully demonstrating. And I'm going to tell you what, more than anything, it sends that clear message to those tyrants up there that we know where you are. Here we are. We're here to show ourselves. We're here to remind you who works for who. And we don't want to come back, but if we have to, we will. And that was the prevalent line of thinking there yesterday, that, if we have to come back, we will. So anyways, guys, I love y'all. Keep up the great work. We're winning. Things are getting better, but we got to stay on top of this, because if Virginia falls, which I know it won't, but if Virginia were to fall, the rest of the country's going to fall. Guarantee it. So this is a national, which is then subsequently a global issue. Yeah, I will bet my life that there were more than 25,000 people. If we could find some sort of, I'll sit there and count them. If you can find, I can't find any aerial photography, which I think they've intentionally blocked it out, but maybe they haven't. I just haven't found it, because there were state police helicopters there and I think news helicopters. When they were taking photos, it was of just the Capitol grounds. There were way more people outside of the Capitol grounds of the Capitol, or they would take photos of just a section of the people outside of the Capitol. I want to see a direct overhead shot, and I think that will prove to everyone who has an ounce of sense that there were at least 50,000 people there. I'll be honest with you, because we did a little count, and just in a good-sized intersection, you can fit almost 1,000 people when they're standing, shoulder to shoulder, which is the way it got there. You can fit 1,000 people in there, because think about it. You can go 30 by 30 people. That's almost 900 people. And I got to tell you, if I were to take that section, the volume of square footage that an intersection takes up, occupies, and multiply that by the number of spaces that I myself saw and walked through, or tried to slowly walk through, in that demonstration throughout several streets, okay? This is going on in probably a 20 square block area, all of this, that I just find it hard to believe that there weren't at least 50,000 people there. But I think we all know, those of us who follow the news, and authorities like this will alter numbers to achieve what they want to achieve. They knew they couldn't go any lower than 25. You can easily take 25,000. You can easily take their numbers. I saw as low as 22,000, like I said at the beginning of the video. But find the aerial footage that, and you know what? We ought to be able to FOIA that from the state police. And I'm glad we talked about this, because I didn't quite read your statement there, but I think it's somebody that was there. And but I'm gonna try to FOIA aerial footage from the state police helicopter that would give an overall one single shot of all the streets around there, because there were helicopters up high enough to capture an image like this, even around tall buildings, I think. And we'll do a count. You can do calculations on that, but I'd like to see what some more impartial crowd estimator folks have to say about the crowd that was there yesterday. Because again, I'll eat my freaking shoe if there weren't 50,000 people there, and I won't be at all shocked if the actual number was around 100,000 or more. Not kidding. Anyways, I love you guys. Gotta roll. I gotta get back to work. I just wanted to make a video on my lunch break, and I appreciate y'all signing in, and stay tuned and stay with us in Virginia. We really appreciate your support. Thanks, guys. Bye.